Sit down and shut your mouth." The command echoed through the cabin just a heartbeat before Caroline Westwood's hand did a sharp crack that froze 150 passengers in stunned silence at 30,000 feet. A woman in a hoodie staggered in seat 28B. Her glasses skewed her cheek, already burning, as whispers rippled through the aisle. To Caroline, this was routine. Another passenger stepping out of line. Another show of authority she'd gotten away with for decades. What she didn't know, what made this moment catastrophic, was that the woman she had just struck wasn't powerless, wasn't anonymous, and wasn't ordinary. She was the CEO of the airline. And this slap was about to dismantle an entire culture of protected cruelty. The fluorescent lights of the terminal at John F. Kennedy International Airport did no favors for anyone at 6:00 Watt AM, especially not Serafina Hayes. She pulled the simple grey beanie down further, hiding her hair, and the exhaustion from a week spent visiting her ailing aunt in Queens. She wore no makeup, just a pair of nondescript glasses, a well-worn charcoal hoodie and jeans. She clutched a standard rolling carry-on. To everyone in the bustling B terminal, she was just another face in the crowd. Another traveller bracing for a 6-hour flight to Los Angeles, which was exactly the point. 6 weeks ago, Serafina Hayes had taken the helm of Aura Wing Airlines, the company her father had built from a single cargo plane into a global empire. Her father, a man of booming charisma and old-school principles, had passed away, leaving his 34-year-old overeducated and underexperienced daughter in charge. The board of directors, a collection of men who had known her since she was in pigtails, were skeptical. The employees were wary. Serafina, however, held an MBA from Harvard and a ruthless efficiency she'd honed working for a rival logistics company for a decade precisely to avoid accusations of nepotism. She knew Aura Wing was failing, not in profits not yet, but in its soul. The internal reports she'd read were filled with complaints of declining customer service, low employee morale, and a toxic, entrenched seniority culture that protected the bitter and punished the ambitious. So she was flying coach not as the CEO, but as Sarah, a freelance graphic designer. This was Flight 771, JFK to LAX, a flagship route. She had taken 3 such flights this month, observing, taking mental notes, the small kindnesses that were missed, the scuffs on the bulkheads, the hollow-eyed weariness of the gate agents. As she boarded, she navigated past the business class cabin where a seat was always reserved for her empty on this flight, and found her spot 28B. A middle seat, the worst seat, the perfect place to observe. The boarding process was a study in controlled chaos. That's when she first saw her. The flight attendant managing the economy cabin had a name tag that read Caroline. She looked to be in her late 50s with a helmet of blonde hair that seemed immovable and a slash of bright red lipstick that was at odds with her sour expression. She wasn't assisting passengers. She was directing traffic, her voice a sharp instrument. "Sir, that bag will not fit. You need to check it now. Mum, you need to move. People are waiting. No, you cannot switch seats. The manifest is locked." Her tone wasn't just firm. It was laced with a weary contempt. Serafina watched as a young man, clearly a nervous flyer, asked Caroline a question about the Wi-Fi. Caroline didn't even look at him. She pointed a long, manicured finger at the seatback card. "It's all in the pamphlet, sir. We are trying to prepare for departure." Serafina felt a familiar knot tighten in her stomach. This was it. This was the rot she had read about. Caroline Westwood Serafina recalled from a file. 28 years with the airline. Dozens of passenger complaints over the last 5 years. All of them dismissed by a manager who was Caroline's old friend. She was legacy. She was untouchable. As Serafina settled into 28B, she noticed an elderly gentleman in 27A across the aisle. He was struggling to lift his small, soft-sided duffel into the overhead bin. He was frail, his hands spotted with age, and he huffed with exertion. Caroline walked by, saw him, and let out an audible sigh. "Sir, if you can't lift your own bag, you should have checked it. We don't get paid to be porters." The old man, who Serafina would later learn was Albert Henderson, flushed red. "I'm sorry, dear. My arthritis. Step aside, Caroline snapped. She yanked the bag from his hands and with a display of exaggerated effort shoved it into the bin, slamming the compartment shut. The force of it shook the bulkhead. Serafina or Sarah locked eyes with Mr. Henderson. She gave him a small, sympathetic smile. He looked away, embarrassed. Serafina pulled out a small coded notebook and a pen. Under the heading FLT 71. She wrote, "See Westwood hostile to elderly 27A. Poor boarding attitude creates tension." She had no idea that by the time they landed, this notebook entry would be the least of Caroline Westwood's problems. The captain announced their departure. The engines whined, and the massive Airbus A321 lifted into the morning sky, carrying its fragile ecosystem of human dramas toward the sun. Serafina closed her eyes, not to sleep, but to listen. The click-clack of the service cart, the murmur of passengers, the sharp, impatient tapping of Caroline's acrylic nails on a passenger's tray table. The storm was gathering. The first 2 hours of the flight were for the most part unremarkable. Serafina focused on her laptop, drafting memos in her head about service protocols, fleet-wide Wi-Fi upgrades, and mandatory de-escalation training. She was seated between a young student who fell asleep before takeoff and a businessman who smelled faintly of stale coffee. The drink service began. Serafina watched Caroline and a younger flight attendant, a kind-eyed woman named Brenda, work the aisle. The contrast was stark. Brenda smiled, offered refills, and laughed with the passenger in row 25. Caroline moved like a shark, her default expression one of deep inconvenience. Mr. Henderson, the elderly man from row 27, pressed his call button. Serafina watched it light up and stay lit. 1 minute. 2 minutes. Caroline and Brenda were both at the galley, hidden behind the curtain. But Serafina could hear their voices. Carolina's was sharp. So I told management, "You can't pay me enough to deal with the kind of trash they let on flights these days. It's not like the old days, Brenda." It was glamorous. Then Serafina sighed, unbuckled her belt, and stood. The businessman next to her grunted. She squeezed past him and walked the few steps to row 27. "Hi there," she said softly to Mr. Henderson. "Are you all right?" The man looked up, his eyes watery. "Oh, I just needed a glass of water to take my medication." He held up a small plastic pill organizer. "I pressed the button, but you," Serafina said, her voice warm. She turned and walked back to the galley, pushing the curtain aside. Caroline and Brenda stopped talking. Caroline's eyes narrowed instantly, a look that said, "How dare you enter my domain?" "Excuse me," Serafina said, politely focusing on Brenda. "The gentleman in 27A needs a glass of water for his medication. His light has been on for a few minutes." Brenda's face flushed with apology. "Oh my goodness, I'm so sorry. I'll get that right." Caroline put a hand on Brenda's arm, stopping her. She turned her full, icy gaze on Serafina. "We are in the middle of our service prep, Mom. He needs to wait his turn like everyone else. He needs it for his medication." Serafina replied, her voice remaining level, though a cold fire was beginning to build in her chest. "It's a simple request. And you need to return to your seat," Caroline snapped. "Passengers are not allowed in the galley. It's a federal regulation. I'll take a bottle if it's easier." Serafina offered, pointing to the rack. "Are you deaf?" Caroline stepped forward, using her body to block Serafina. "Go sit down. We will get to him when we get to him." The open contempt, the sheer unadulterated power trip was breathtaking. Serafina knew that Sarah, the graphic designer, would back down. She would be intimidated. But Serafina Hayes, the CEO, was cataloguing every microaggression. "Fine," Serafina said, her voice flat. She turned, but not before Brenda quickly and furtively grabbed a bottle of water, and when Caroline's back was turned, slipped it to Serafina with a whispered, "I'm sorry." Serafina gave Brenda a grateful nod and returned to Mr. Henderson, handing him the water. "Oh, thank you. Thank you so much, young lady," he whispered, fumbling with the cap. Serafina helped him open it. "That other one. She's not very kind, is she?" "No, sir," Serafina said, squeezing past the businessman to her middle seat. "She is not." The rest of the flight, Serafina felt a new heavy weight in her chest. This was worse than she thought. The problem wasn't just bad service. It was a culture of cruelty, wielded by a person who felt so secure in her position that she could abuse an old man with impunity. An hour later, turbulence hit. It wasn't severe, just a persistent teeth-rattling chop. The fastened seatbelt sign illuminated. Serafina watched Caroline patrol the aisle, her movements jerky and impatient. "Trees up. Put that laptop away." I said, "Trays up." She reached row 27. Mr. Henderson, who had fallen into a light doze, still had his plastic cup of water on his tray table. As the plane dipped, the cup slid, spilling a small amount of water onto the floor and onto the hem of Caroline's navy blue uniform skirt. It was just a splash, a few drops. Caroline Westwood stopped dead. She looked down at the wet spot. She looked up at the startled, sleeping face of Mr. Henderson, and she exploded. "You!" Caroline's voice wasn't just loud, it was a shriek. It cut through the engine's drone and the cabin's murmur. Mr. Henderson jolted awake, his eyes wide with terror. "You incompetent old fool." Caroline snarled, her face contorting into a mask of pure rage. "Look what you've done. This is a $200 skirt. You soaked me." I'm so sorry, I was asleep." Mr. Henderson stammered, his hands trembling as he fumbled for napkins. "The turbulence. Don't you blame the turbulence." Caroline jabbed a finger in his face. The other passengers in the surrounding rows were now staring wide-eyed. "You're a burden. People like you shouldn't be allowed to fly alone. You're a liability." This was it. The line wasn't just crossed, it was obliterated. Serafina was unbuckled and on her feet in a microsecond. That is enough. Her voice was not loud, but it was cold. It was steel. It carried a weight that made Caroline stop her tirade mid-rant and turn. "What did you say?" Caroline hissed, her eyes finding Serafina. "Oh, it's you again, the galley lawyer. Get back in your seat. You will not speak to him that way," Serafina said, moving to stand between Caroline and Mr. Henderson, creating a physical barrier. "You are abusing a passenger. It was an accident. Apologize to him." A collective gasp went through the cabin. The sheer audacity of a passenger in 28B demanding an apology from the dragon of 28 years' service was unthinkable. Caroline let out a short, barking laugh. "Apologize to him. You're delusional." She looked Serafina up and down, her gaze lingering on the hoodie, the beanie, the dark skin of Serafina's face. The assessment was swift and brutal. "You know," Caroline said, her voice dropping to a conspiratorial, venomous whisper, "I should have known. You people always stick together, don't you? Always looking for a handout, always playing the victim." The word hung in the air. You people. The cabin's oxygen seemed to vanish. Serafina felt the blood drain from her face, replaced by a glacial cold. This was no longer about bad service. This wasn't about a spilled drink. This was raw, unadulterated bigotry unleashed at 30,000 FTSO. "What?" Serafina said, her voice dangerously quiet. "Did you just say, 'You heard me'?" Caroline spat, emboldened by Serafina's stunned silence. She saw it as weakness. "You come on here with your attitude thinking you own the place. You're just a disruptive passenger, and I've had it with you." Caroline Brenda, the younger attendant, said, her voice trembling from the galley. "Caroline, stop. The captain, you stay out of this, Brenda." Caroline wheeled around. "This is my cabin." She turned back to Serafina. Her face was inches away, radiating heat and the faint smell of stale coffee. "I am the authority on this aircraft, and I am ordering you to sit down and shut your mouth." "No," Serafina said. The word was final. "You are an embarrassment to this uniform. You are a disgrace to this airline. And as of this moment, you are." Serafina paused. She had been about to say fired. She had been about to break her own rules to end the entire charade. But what good would that do? This woman would just claim she was unhinged. She needed to see this through. "You are going to be reported." Serafina finished recalibrating. "I am going to take your name, your employee number, and I am personally going to file the most comprehensive complaint this airline has ever seen." Caroline's eyes flashed with a new, wilder anger. It was the anger of a cornered animal, one that had just realized it was in a fight it might not win. But all she saw was a passenger in a hoodie. "You're threatening me," she sneered. "You're threatening my job after 28 years. You're nothing." "I'm stating a fact," Serafina said, holding her ground. "You don't get to talk to me like that." Caroline's voice pitched higher. "You don't know who I am. And you?" Serafina replied, the ice in her voice now freezing solid, "Clearly have no idea who I am." That was the sentence that broke the dam. For Caroline, it was the ultimate challenge to her authority. This passenger wasn't just challenging her. She was implying she had power. It was an inversion of the world Caroline understood. "I'll show you who I am," Caroline whispered, her lips curling back. And with a speed that defied her age, she drew back her hand. Crack! The sound was shockingly loud. It was not a movie sound effect. It was the sharp, ugly, percussive sound of skin on skin. It echoed in the small, carpeted tube of the fuselage, loud enough to be heard over the engine's constant drone. Every baby that was crying stopped. Every conversation ended. Every head that wasn't already turned snapped toward the aisle at row 28. Serafina's head had been knocked to the side by the force of it. Her glasses askew dug into the bridge of her nose. Her beanie was knocked loose, revealing the tightly coiled black hair she had tucked beneath it. Her cheek wasn't just stinging. It was on fire, a sudden blossoming heat that she could feel spreading down to her jaw. She had been hit aboard her own plane by her own employee in front of 150 passengers. She slowly, very slowly, turned her head back to face Caroline. Her eyes, which had been cold, were now something else entirely. They were voids. Caroline Westwood, for her part, looked as shocked as anyone. Her hand was still half raised, trembling. Her mouth was open in a small O of surprise. She hadn't meant to do that. It was a reflex, a line she had never in 28 years dreamed of crossing. But she had, and the silence that followed was her judgment. From a few rows back, a new small sound emerged. The distinct click of a smartphone camera starting to record. A young man in 31C who had been filming the crazy flight attendant for his TikTok had just captured the defining moment of the entire incident. "Oh my God," Brenda whispered from the galley, her hands flying to her mouth. Caroline's shock evaporated, replaced by a tidal wave of panic. She knew instantly what she had done. She knew the finality of it, and, like any cornered animal, she didn't surrender. She attacked. She threatened me. Caroline shouted, her voice shrill, and panicked, pointing a trembling finger at Serafina. "You all saw it. She was aggressive. She was threatening me and that old man. She was lunging. It was a pathetic, desperate lie, and everyone who had seen it knew it." Serafina said nothing. She calmly reached up, straightened her glasses, and tucked her beanie back into her hoodie pocket. She didn't touch her cheek, though the red hand-shaped mark was already blossoming a grotesque badge against her dark skin. She looked past Caroline at Brenda. "Brenda," she said, her voice perfectly calm, "please bring me a bag of ice for my face. And would you please inform Captain Miller that a passenger has been assaulted by a member of his crew? I'd like the police to meet us at the gate in Los Angeles." The precision of the request, the absolute lack of hysteria, was more terrifying than any scream. Caroline's face went white. "No, you're the one who is going to be arrested. You caused this. I acted in self-defense. I feared for my safety." It was the magic phrase the one drilled into them in training to justify any action, but it sounded hollow, even to her. "Mom," Serafina said finally, looking Caroline full in the face, "go to the galley, sit down, and do not speak another word. Do you understand me?" It was not a request. It was a command, and it was delivered with an authority that Caroline, for the first time in her life, had no answer for. The power dynamic which she had fought so hard to maintain had not just shifted. It had inverted like a black hole. This woman in the hoodie, with the red mark on her face, was now in complete control. Sobbing a messy, ugly sound of sheer panic. Caroline Westwood turned and stumbled, almost falling into the galley, where she collapsed onto a jump seat and buried her face in her hands. Sarafina turned back to Mr. Henderson, who looked like he was about to have a heart attack. "Sir, are you all right?" He nodded, mute. She looked at the other passengers. "I apologize for that disturbance. Please return to your seats. We are still in turbulence." As if by magic, they all sat. They buckled their belts. The tension was still a living thing in the air, a 1,000-volt charge, but the chaos had been contained. Seraphim walked back to 28B, squeezed past the still gawking businessmen, and sat down. She stared at the seat back in front of her. Brenda quietly appeared moments later, handing her a blue air sickness bag filled with ice. "Thank you, Brenda," Sarafina said, not looking at her. "Mom, I am so sorry." Brenda whispered, tears in her eyes. Sarafina finally turned her head and looked at the young attendant. "It's not your fault, Brenda, but I need you to do something for me. Anything. I need you to write down everything you just saw, everything you've seen on this flight. Be honest. Be detailed. Will you do that?" Brenda nodded, her face grim. "Yes, Mom, I will." Sarafina placed the ice against her throbbing cheek. There was still 3 hours to go until they landed in Los Angeles. 3 hours for Caroline Westwood to sit in the galley contemplating the abyss. She had just thrown her life in two, and 3 hours for Sarafina Hayes to plan with surgical precision exactly what was going to happen when the wheels of Flight 771 touched down. The last 3 hours of the flight were the quietest, most tension-filled hours Sarafina had ever experienced. The air was dead. No one spoke above a whisper. Brenda, bless her heart, performed the rest of the in-flight service alone, her face a pale mask of professional duty. She avoided the front galley, using the rear one instead. From the front galley, where Caroline was sequestered, there was only silence. Sarafina spent the time doing exactly what she said she would. On her laptop, ignoring the no laptop rule, she typed. She wrote a detailed, time-stamped account of the entire flight. From the moment she watched Carolyn abuse Mr. Henderson at boarding, to the verbal assault, to the racial slur, to the physical strike. She was dispassionate, her writing style that of a legal brief. At 10:47 a.m., Easton C. Westwood, in response to a verbal request to de-escalate, struck the undersigned passenger on the left side of the face with an open right hand. She also typed a series of text messages which the in-flight Wi-Fi, ironically, was strong enough to send. The first was to her chief of staff. "Need you to reschedule my 4 p.m. A situation has developed on FLTE 71. I am fine." The second was to the head of her legal department. "I need a team to meet me at LAX Gate Boss 4. There has been an in-flight assault. Yes, I am the victim. The perpetrator is an employee. Full details when I land." The final text was to David Chen, Aura Wings, Senior Vice President of West Coast Operations. "David, I am on FLT 771 landing at 12:35 p.m. I need you, and I need airport security at Gate B44. An employee, Caroline Westwood, has assaulted me. She has called for airport police to arrest me as a disruptive passenger. We need to control this narrative, and we need to do it 5 minutes ago." David Chen, a man known for his unflappable calm, replied in seconds. "On my way." "Are you injured?" Sarafina typed my pride and my cheek. "But I'll live." "This is bad, David. It's the smoking gun we've been looking for. Just be ready." When the captain announced their initial descent into Los Angeles, Sarafina could feel the collective sigh of relief from the cabin. As the sprawling grid of LA appeared below, Captain Miller's voice came on the intercom. "Ladies and gentlemen, as we approach the gate, we ask that you remain in your seats. Due to an incident on board, law enforcement will be meeting our flight. Please remain seated until they have resolved the situation. We apologize for the delay." His voice was strained. Sarafina knew without a doubt that he had only heard one side of the story. Caroline's. In his mind, a disruptive passenger was in 28B, and he was following the protocol to protect his crew. The plane taxied to the gate. The ding of the seatbelt sign extinguishing was met with silence. No one moved. Everyone was watching row 28. Serafina remained in her seat, calmly packing her laptop. She placed the soggy bag of ice into her empty coffee cup. The red handprint on her face had subsided to a dull purple-yellow bruise, an angular-looking welt. The jet bridge attached to the door opened. 2 LAX airport police officers boarded. One was a tall, stern-looking man, Officer Roberts. The other, Officer Diaz, was a woman with a sharp, observant face. "Okay, folks," Officer Roberts said, his voice booming in the quiet. "We're here for he checked his notes. A Sarah, a disruptive passenger. Caroline Westwood suddenly appeared from the galley. Her face was a mess. Her makeup was strewy. Her eyes were red and swollen. She looked broken. And she was going for a final desperate gamble. That's her," she cried, pointing at Serafina. "The woman in 28B. She attacked me. She threatened me. She roused the other passengers. I feared for my life." Officer Roberts and Officer Diaz exchanged a look. This was dramatic. They started walking down the aisle. Mom Officer Roberts said, his voice flat, his hand resting near his belt. "I'm going to have to ask you to come with us." Serafina slowly stood up, gathering her backpack. "Of course, officer," she said, her voice clear and calm. "I am more than happy to give you my statement." "No," Caroline shrieked. "You have to arrest her. She's dangerous. Mum." Officer Diaz said, turning to Caroline, "Please let us do our jobs. We'll get your statement in a minute." As Serafina stepped into the aisle, a voice came from behind her. "I have the video." It was the young man from 31C. He was holding his phone up. "She's lying. The flight attendant is lying. She hit this passenger who was doing nothing. She also called that old man names. I've got it all. I'll send it to you." Officer Diaz's entire demeanor changed. "Thank you, sir. Please remain here. We'll need your information." And mine, an older woman in 29A, said, "It was disgraceful, that poor old man." Suddenly, a dozen passengers were all speaking at once, all corroborating the story. She hit her. It was awful. The old man did nothing. Caroline's face crumpled. The lie had failed. Serafina walked calmly up the aisle, the 2 officers flanking her, not as a suspect, but as an escort. When she reached the jet bridge, a chaotic scene awaited her. There, standing at the gate, was a small, severe-looking man in a $5,000 suit, David Chen. Beside him were 2 other men in suits. The lawyers and the LAX station manager, a woman who looked like she was about to be sick. The moment David Chen saw Serafina's face, his professional calm vanished, replaced by a flicker of pure fury. He strode forward. "Serafina," he said, his voice sharp. He didn't use her Sarah cover. The time for that was over. He looked at her bruised cheek. "My God, are you all right?" Officer Roberts and Officer Diaz stopped. They looked at the man in the suit. They looked at the entourage. They looked at the disruptive passenger in the hoodie. And they suddenly realized they were in the middle of a play where they didn't know the characters. Sir Officer Roberts said, "This woman is a person of interest in an in-flight incident." This woman, David Chen, said, his voice dripping with acid as he draped a protective arm around Serafina's shoulder, is Serafina Hayes. She is the Chief Executive Officer and owner of Airline. She is the victim. "And you," he said, pointing a finger past the officers toward the plane's door where Caroline was hovering, "are about to arrest the woman who assaulted her." The jet bridge became a vacuum. The only sound was the distant whine of a turbine from another gate and the frantic click, click, click of the LAX station manager typing into her phone. Officer Roberts and Officer Diaz froze. Their faces, trained to be impassive, cycled through confusion, dawning comprehension, and finally a profound sense of "oh crap." Officer Diaz recovered first. "Mr. Chen, Mom, Ms. Hayes, my apologies. Let's step into the terminal so we can sort this out." But the real drama was happening at the airplane door. Caroline Westwood had heard David. She had seen the suits. She had processed the words, "Chief Executive Officer." It was not possible. It was a trick, a lie. The woman in 28B, the one in the hoodie, the one she had called "you people," was the CEO. Caroline's mind simply refused to accept it. She stumbled out onto the jet bridge, her face a mask of desperate denial. "No," she whispered. "No, you're lying. That's not, she's not." Serafina turned to face her. She had taken off her glasses. The bruise on her cheek was stark vivid. Her eyes, which had been voids, were now just tired. Infinitely tired. "Hello, Caroline," Serafina said. Her voice was soft, but it carried in the enclosed space. "You're right. I'm not Sarah. My name is Serafina Hayes, employee ID1, and you've been working for my family's company for 28 years." The specificity of the employee ID 001 was the final nail. Caroline's legs gave out. She physically sagged against the wall of the jet bridge, a low moan escaping her. "Oh God! Oh my God! Oh no!" "This," Serafina said, gesturing to the scene, "is David Chen, our SVP of West Coast Ops. These are gentlemen from our legal counsel, and I believe you've already met officers Roberts and Diaz." M. Hayes. Officer Roberts said, now deeply professional, "Do you wish to press charges for assault?" This was the question. This was the moment of karma. Serafina could with one word have this woman arrested, cuffed, and dragged through the terminal she had ruled for 3 decades. She could destroy her. Serafina looked at Caroline, this shell of a woman hyperventilating against a wall. She saw the 28 years of bitterness, the curdled pride, the casual ingrained racism, and she felt nothing but a cold resolve. "No, officer," Serafina said, and a flicker of hope appeared in Caroline's eyes. "I will not be pressing criminal charges." Caroline let out a sob of relief, because Serafina continued, her voice hardening. "The criminal justice system is overburdened. What Ms. Westwood needs is not jail. What she needs is to be held accountable by the company she so profoundly betrayed." "David," she said, turning to her executive. "Yes, Serafina. Ms. Westwood is to be immediately suspended indefinitely pending investigation. Her flight privileges are revoked. Her badge and credentials are to be confiscated. She is to be escorted off airport property not by the police, but by our security. I want a full statement from her and from Brenda and from Captain Miller, who I'll be speaking with personally about his failure to ascertain the facts before calling the police on a passenger." She turned back to the officers. "Officers, I will give you a full statement. So will Mr. Chen. I also need you to get the contact information of the passenger in 31C. He has video evidence which our legal team will require. And I would like someone to check on the gentleman in 27A, Mr. Albert Henderson. He was the initial target of Ms. Westwood's abuse. Please see that he is taken to our first-class lounge and tell him I will be there to apologize to him personally." It was a rapid-fire series of commands, each one delivered with the precision of a CEO who had just spent 6 hours casing her own factory. Caroline, hearing the litany of suspended, revoked, escorted, began to wail. "No, please, M. Hayes. Serafina, please. It was a mistake. The turbulence. I'm stressed. I didn't mean it. I'm not like that." "You're not like that," Serafina repeated, taking one step closer. The proximity made Caroline flinch. "You verbally abused an elderly passenger for being frail. You refused him water for his medication. You used a racial slur against me because I dared to question you. And then you struck me. It just slipped out." Caroline cried. "It didn't slip out," Caroline. Serafina said, the ice back in her voice. "It was in there. The hate was in there. The prejudice was in there. The entitlement was in there. All you needed was a middle-seat passenger in a hoodie to give you permission to let it out. You've just spent thus 28 years waiting for an excuse." She turned away. "David, handle this. I'm going to go talk to my passenger. Serafina Hayes, CEO." Her face bruised her hoodie, rumpled, walked past the stunned officers, past her frantic legal team, and past the weeping, broken flight attendant. She walked into Terminal B, leaving the wreckage of Carolyn Westwood's life behind her on the jet bridge. The video from 31C, by the way, was uploaded to TikTok before the passenger had even cleared the terminal. By the time Serafina sat down with a cup of tea in her own lounge, it already had 50,000 views. The caption, "Aura Wing flight attendant slaps black passenger." Wait for the ending. The reckoning was just beginning. The word karma implies a cosmic mystical force. But in the corporate world, karma is simply a balance sheet. It's action-reaction and the brutal, unfiltered consequences of liability. For Caroline Westwood, the karma was swift, total, and devastating. The indefinite suspension lasted exactly 24 hours, the time it took for Aura Wing's HR and legal departments to complete the investigation. The video, now with 30 million views, served as Exhibit A, B, and C. Brenda's written statement, a 4-page detailed account of Caroline's long-standing pattern of abusive behavior, was the eulogy. Caroline was terminated for cause gross misconduct, passenger assault violation of the Civil Rights Act. The for-cause distinction was critical. It meant no severance, no 28-year pension, no flight benefits for life. She lost it all in a 10-minute Zoom call. But the public, fueled by the viral video, demanded more. Caroline became, for a time, the most hated person in America. She was Airline Karen Sky Ranger. Her face was everywhere. She couldn't leave her modest Long Island condo without being recognized and heckled. Her friends, many of them legacy flight attendants themselves, distanced themselves, terrified of the same cleansing fire. She tried to sue Aura Wing for wrongful termination, claiming emotional distress. The airline's legal team, on Serafina's orders, didn't just defend. They countersued, citing the catastrophic and material damage to the brand. The suit was dropped. She tried to get a job with other airlines. She was blacklisted. The moment her name was typed into a background check, the file was closed. 6 months later, she was working a night shift stocking shelves at a 24-hour grocery store, unrecognized and visible. Her hands, which had once commanded a cabin, now just moving cans from a box to a shelf. The glamour was gone. But Serafina Hayes knew that firing one toxic employee wasn't justice. It was just pruning. The real karma, the hard karma, was systemic. The rot was in the roots. The week after the incident, Serafina called an all-hands-on-deck mandatory meeting for all 6,000 Aura Wing flight attendants and all corporate-level management. She walked onto the stage in the Houston hangar, the faint yellow-purple of her bruise still visible under her makeup. She didn't use a teleprompter. "Good morning," she began. Many of you have seen a video online, a video that shows an employee of this airline, a 28-year veteran, assaulting a passenger. That passenger was me. A wave of gasps and murmurs. But it shouldn't matter that it was me. What matters is that it happened. What matters is that we as a company created an environment where a woman like Caroline Westwood felt so secure, so entitled, so protected by her seniority that she felt she could physically strike a customer. And what matters is that she was almost right. Serafina then laid out the Aura Wing Uplift Initiative. It was not a suggestion. It was a restructuring. First, the head of in-flight services, Caroline's old friend, who had buried her complaints, was publicly fired. Second, the entire seniority-based system for promotions and cabin assignments was dismantled. From now on, assignments would be based on merit, passenger reviews, and peer evaluations. Third, she announced a mandatory company-wide dignity and service training. This wasn't a 2-hour PowerPoint. It was a 3-day immersive seminar run by outside de-escalation and diversity specialists. Attendance was not optional, and failure to pass the certification meant you were grounded. Finally, she promoted Brenda, the young attendant who had tried to help, and made her the new face of the in-flight training program with a significant raise. She personally found Mr. Albert Henderson apologized on behalf of the airline and gifted him and his entire family first-class tickets to anywhere in the world anytime for the next 10 years. The old guard of the airline balked. They called it a witch hunt. Over 300 legacy attendants who refused to adapt to the new culture quit in protest. Serafina let them. Good, she told David Chen. We're letting the poison out. It was painful. It was expensive. The stock dipped. But then a year later, something remarkable happened. Aurora Airlines, once the subject of jokes and scandals, was voted most improved airline by a major travel consortium. Passenger complaints were down 80%. Employee satisfaction was at an all-time high. The Aura Wing uplift was being taught as a case study in business schools. Serafina Hayes had taken the worst moment of her professional life, the crack of a hand against her face, and used it as a thunderclap to wake her company up. The hard karma wasn't just Caroline Westwood stocking shelves. The hard karma was Serafina succeeding, thriving, and rebuilding an entire corporation into something that was for the first time truly worthy of its fly, the Friendly Skies tagline. 1 year, 365 days. That's how long it had been since the incident on Flight 71. To the world, it was a half-forgotten viral video, a news cycle that had long since spun on. To the employees of Aura Wing Airlines, it was the Great Reset. To Serafina Hayes, it was the scar that had saved the patient. And to Caroline Westwood, it was the end of the world. The scene is Aura Wing Flight 8 or 15, a gleaming new Boeing 787 Dreamliner on its nightly 10 porcelain p.m. departure from JFK to London Heathrow. The cabin is bathed in a soft, programmed sunset of blue and purple lighting, part of the uplift initiative to promote calm. A passenger in business class, a man named Mr. Davis, is not calm. This is unacceptable, he says, his voice a low, privileged growl. He's holding up a glass of champagne. This is not Dom Perignon. Your online menu specifically promised Dom. The flight attendant he is addressing does not sigh. She does not roll her eyes. She does not point to a pamphlet. She leans in slightly, her expression one of genuine concern. You are absolutely right, Mr. Davies. I am so sorry. It seems our catering supply at JFK was loaded with the Veuve Clicquot instead. I know it's not what you were anticipating. Can I offer you a complimentary premium Scotch flight as an apology? Or perhaps I can see if we have one of our reserve Napa Valley Reds you might enjoy. The attendant's name tag reads Brenda. This is not the trembling, tearful Brenda of a year ago. This is Purser Brenda, the lead flight attendant for the airline's flagship international route. She is poised warm and in complete command. Her promotion had been swift, her talent for service now backed by an unshakable company mandate. Mr. Davies blinks his prepared tirade, deflating. Well, Scotch, you say, fine, make it the 18 year. An excellent choice. I will bring that right over along with some warm nuts. Brenda smiles, and again, my apologies for the discrepancy. We will be logging this to ensure our menus are updated. She glides away, a perfect example of the dignity and service training she now helps to lead. In seat 1A, tucked away, Serafina Hayes watches the entire exchange over the top of her tablet. She isn't in a hoodie. She is the CEO, and she is on a flagship flight. And her presence alone keeps everyone on their agony. But she isn't looking for flaws to punish. She's looking for successes to reward. She flags Brenda as she passes. That, Serafina says quietly, was a masterclass in de-escalation. Brenda beams, a flush of pride rising. Ms. Hayes, thank you. It's just what we do now. He's not angry about the champagne. He's angry about his delayed meeting or his fight with his wife. We're just here to make the next 8 hours of his life better. The uplift is working, Brenda. You're working, Serafina says. We all are, Brenda replies, her voice dropping. It wasn't easy. A lot of the old guard, they fought it. They said we were coddling passengers. And where are they? Serafina asks. Flying for discount carriers or retired? Brenda says with a small, sharp smile. The ones who stayed. We're a real team now. We look out for each other. We don't let anyone fall or get pushed. The unspoken memory of Caroline, of the assault of the culture that allowed it, hangs in the air. Good Serafina says. Keep up the excellent work, Purser. As Brenda moves on, Serafina thinks about the numbers. The stock is up 35%. Passenger loyalty, the metric she cares about most, has tripled. Orang is the most requested airline for corporate accounts. They had proven in spreadsheets and on balance sheets that human decency was profitable. The plane takes off, lifting over the glittering lights of a city that never sleeps, and begins its journey across the dark, vast Atlantic 4,500-meter way. And in a different universe entirely, the fluorescent lights of a 24-hour shop and Save grocery store hum with a sickly, buzzing persistence. It is 3:17 a.m. in Levittown, Long Island. The aisles are empty, save for one figure. A woman looking much older than her 59 years is pushing a large squeaking U-Bot cart piled with boxes of cat food. Her hair, once a helmet of defiant blonde, is now a limp dishwater grey ponytail. Her hands, which once displayed 80 dotless manicures, are raw and red, the knuckles cracked from the dry cardboard and the cold night air. She wears a stained navy blue polyester smock with a Caroline name tag. She is invisible. Westwood. The voice, high-pitched and arrogant, cracks through the silence. A 22-year-old night manager named Kevin, all pimples, and unearned authority struts up clipboard in hand. What is this? This aisle was supposed to be faced and stocked 20 minutes ago. You're holding up the floor buffer? What's the problem? Caroline flinches, a gesture that is now second nature. She hunches her shoulders, making herself smaller. I'm sorry, Kevin. The boxes were heavy. And the tape. Excuses? He snaps his voice, mimicking a manager he saw on a reality TV show. I don't get paid to listen to excuses. I get paid to see results. You're on a write-up, Caroline. One more, and you're on probation. A year ago, Caroline Westwood would have verbally and perhaps physically annihilated this boy. She would have had him fired. She would have mocked his acne and his cheap sneakers. Now she just nods her eyes, fixed on the dirty linoleum. Yes, Kevin. I'm sorry, Kevin. I'll be faster. Just get it done, he mutters, making a note on his clipboard. We're not paying you to be a porter. The word porter hits her like a physical blow. It's the same word she used on Mr. Henderson, the same word that Serafina Hayes had written in her official complaint, the one that was read aloud at the termination hearing. Tears, hot and acidic, prickle at her eyes. She fights them back. Crying is a violation, and Kevin will write her up for creating a hostile environment. This is her karma. It is not a single dramatic bolt of lightning. It is a slow, grinding, eternal present of humiliation. It is the loss of power. It is the agony of being exactly what she once despised, a faceless, interchangeable, disposable member of you people. She lost the lawsuit. Wrongful termination was laughed out of court when the video was played. Her friends, the other legacy attendants, had long since stopped returning her calls, terrified that her toxicity was contagious. Her pension was gone. Her 401k was liquidated to pay her legal bills. Her condo was in foreclosure. She finishes stocking the Friskies and Meow Mix. Her hands shaking as she pushes her empty cart toward the back. She passes the small break room. The television bolted to the wall is playing a 24-hour business news channel. On the screen is Serafina Hayes, live from a London symposium, looking radiant in a sharp cobalt blue suit. The Chiron reads, Serafina Hayes, the CEO who saved an airline. We believe Serafina is saying on the screen that you can't just fix a problem. You have to fix the culture that allowed the problem to exist. Our Dignity and Service initiative isn't just a memo, it's our new DNA. Caroline stands frozen in the aisle, silhouetted by the light of the beer cooler. She watches the woman who took everything from her. The woman in the hoodie, the woman she slapped, now being hailed as a visionary. A younger stalker, a girl named Maria, comes up behind her. Creepy, right? Maria whispers. Standing in the dark, Caroline jumps, a small choked gasp escaping her. Hey, calm down, Maria says. It's just me. Go take your break. You look like you've seen a ghost. Caroline looks back at the TV at Serafina's smiling, triumphant face. No. Caroline whispers, her voice a dry rasp. Not a ghost, the opposite. She shuffles into the break room, her back aching, and sits down at the sticky table, the smell of burnt popcorn and old coffee, her only companions. She has 6 hours left in her shift, and then another shift tomorrow. And another, stretching into a bleak, colourless infinity. The karma she had learned was not in the fall. It was in the never-ending impact long after the world had stopped watching. This story is a stark reminder that our true character is revealed not when we are in charge, but when we believe we have all the power over someone who has none. Caroline Westwood forgot that every passenger, every person deserves dignity. She paid the price. But the real lesson here isn't just about her downfall, it's about Sarafina's rise. She didn't just fire one bad apple, she tore out the rot at the root and rebuilt the entire orchard. This is a story of karma, but it's also a story of true leadership. What did you think of Caroline's karma? Was it too harsh or not enough? Let me know your thoughts in the comments below. Thank you for watching. If you were moved by this story, please hit that like button. Share this video with someone who needs to see it. And don't forget to subscribe for more real-life drama and hard-hitting stories. Click the bell so you never miss an update.